Today we're going to be doing a heat transfer vinyl project. So if you've been getting the mystery boxes lately, you'll recognize these vinyls. So here I have the bright teal from the graffiti and glow sticks mystery box, and from the Bohemian mystery box a couple weeks back, there's the pastel sampler. So these are the two colors for the iron-on that I'm going to be using, or the two samples, but you can use any colors you have at home. There is a free file as well for this project, so you'll find the link to the file below in the comment section. But a few other things that I'm going to be using is the standard grip mat. If you're using the Explore 3 or a Maker 3 like I am, you don't need a mat. You can skip the mat if you're using smart materials, but I'm not using smart materials, so I do still have to use the mat. And I'm also going to use some basic weeding tools. So to get started, we're going to also, as it is a heat transfer vinyl application, we're also going to be using the Easy Press mat as well as the new Easy Press 3. So it is optional. If you have the mat, you can always select that you have a towel. I do prefer using the mat just because it's a more even heating with the mat. It just seems like foam, but it's really patented technology to make sure that the heat is evenly dispersed. And really the big difference with this new Easy Press 3 is the amazing app that comes with it. So before, you would have to check with the heat guide to see how long to press or what temperature it should be at. But now it's all automatic. You don't have to set the timer anymore. Whenever you select everything in Design Space, it'll automatically set the press for you. So we'll take a closer look at how that works. Let's get started in Design Space to get the project made, and then we'll get the materials open and cut in the Maker 3 today. So this is the file that I'm going to be making with the heat transfer vinyl, or the iron-on vinyl. So you do see that there's three different colors here in the background, as well as the pink in the foreground. So in total, I'm going to be using 4 different colors of vinyl. If you wanted, you don't have to make it like this. I'll show you how to edit it a few different ways depending on what you want to make. So we're going to start with a new canvas as though you're getting this file for the first time from me. So you're going to click down here in the left hand side to upload the file, and then select Upload Image. So at this point you have already saved the file from my email to your computer. So wherever you saved it to is where you're going to look. A lot of times it'll automatically be in the download folder. I have the files here in my spring file folder. So this is the SVG I'm looking for. So spring is in the air palette. That's the one that we're going to be making today. So because it is a true SVG file, whenever you upload it to Design Space, you won't have the option to make any edits to it. It does look a little weird in the upload screen, but when you continue and put it onto the canvas, it will look normal. It's just the way it's formatted in Inkscape. So here I have the image. Again, it doesn't look completely right, but once we add it into our canvas, you'll see that the pieces are completely solid. So down here in the left-hand corner, you can click this minus button to zoom out of the screen. And then I'm going to make sure that it's resized properly. So right now it's 13 inches by 11 inches. I want to make sure that it's smaller than my heat press. So I'm going to make it 8.5 inches wide. Now if you look over onto the right hand side, you can see the different layers. You want to make sure that when you're sizing it, you're selecting all of the layers together. So right now everything is grouped. If you change the size with this arrow button or with the tabs here at the top, it'll change the size of all the layers. So you want to make sure that everything is selected anytime you're doing any sizing changes. But if you want to change some of the colors, or you want the background to be a solid color, I'll show you a couple different ways that we can do that. So here on the right hand side, we're in the layers panel. You'll see that we have 4 different layers that are all grouped together. So this is the first layer of text, and we also have the 3 palettes in the background that are, or brush strokes that are grouped together. To ungroup them, you can click the ungroup button and then you can move it around individually of one another. That's not necessary though for this. If you want to change the colors in the background, you can always just select the bottom group here and then go up to the top toolbar beside the operation box to the color palette box and change the color. So if you're only using 2 different colors of vinyl, you can always do all the background strokes the same color and the text in a different color. Now I don't want to attach anything because when you attach the 2 together, it's going to change everything to be the same color. And then it's going to cut the pink text out of the blue text. So if, for example, I click on attach, everything's going to change to be an attached layer. And then it's actually going to cut out this one color from the color in the back. So I don't want to do that for this project at all. I want to make sure to keep everything separate so that when I click on the Make It screen, it sorts it into separate mats for me. So if you're doing it with just 2 colors, when you click on Make It, the machine is going to sort it out into 2 separate project mats for you. In this case, I need a mat since it's not smart vinyl. So these pieces are just going to be anywhere on the mat since they are not attached with each other. They're not going to retain their position. And this piece here is going to stay together because it's already one solid layer. This is just the image. So I want to fix these colors so that they stay together. So if you're having a hard time layering or it's your first time layering, I would suggest doing the 2 colors if you're not feeling that confident. You can select this group of layers here by either clicking on it or by selecting it on the right hand side of the layers panel. And you want to attach this bottom layer. So now that this bottom layer is attached, you'll see the layer description will change to attach. And when we click on Make It, we'll select Matte again. But these pieces will be in the right spot automatically. So you won't have to try place them around. Whenever you weed this image, we're just going to do it in one solid stroke. For this one here, it'll be the same thing, just one solid piece. Now it's going to cut the blue one first and then the pink one second. Whatever color you put in the machine is the color it's going to cut. So if we put purple vinyl into the machine, this picture is going to be purple. It's not a printer. It's just cutting whatever material we're putting into the Cricut machine. So with iron-on vinyl, the way we put it onto the mat is in reverse or backwards. So you're putting the shiny side down and the material facing up. So for that reason, we need to mirror the mat. I'll explain that a little bit more later as well as to why we're doing it, but you really want to make sure that you're mirroring it anytime you're using heat transfer vinyl. So if we were to make this with 3 separate colors like I have on the bag that I showed at the start of the video, we're going to make sure to change all the colors here. So for this, you can select the layers individually, come up here to the top to the color swatch and change the color. But you will notice that everything is going to change again because it is still attached. So you want to make sure to come down here to the bottom to detach the layers so that you can change the colors individually. With the attach, you can detach. With group, you can ungroup. But if you use the weld function, it is permanent. So we'll talk more about weld. I have another video specifically on the weld function, but we'll touch base on that later. So right now I'm looking to change these into 3 separate colors. So I can select the layers individually now that they're only grouped and change the color of each individual layer. So if you wanted to test it out and see what it would look like with yellow, purple, and pink, here's your chance to mess around with the color palette and see which colors you like best. Now, if you're having the problem of the layers not being behind one another or not showing, that's just the order that they are appearing in the layers panel. So right now, these 3 layers are above the text. So if you want to see what the text actually looks like on top, you can click it and drag it to the top in the layers panel. Or you can click on the text and up here in the top toolbar, you can select the arrange button and send it all the way to the back. so it's behind, or send it all the way to the front so it's in front. So this gives us a good idea of what we're looking to make for this project. This one I'm cutting out of heat transfer vinyl, so we'll click on Make It. We're going to select a mat. And again, you'll see that all the pieces are just kind of random. It doesn't pick really any order to the colors. The first one that it's going to cut is this yellow piece, or whatever piece of material we put in the Cricut machine. So we're going to select Mirror. And we're going to mirror all the mats at the same time just to make sure that we don't miss any later. Now the great thing about Design Space is it is very user friendly. So when we get to the next screen to select the material we're using, if for some reason we don't have iron-on material selected, it will give us that reminder to change the material settings on the mat to have it mirrored. So I'm going to browse all materials to find the iron-on that I'm using. So I'm using Cricut Everyday Iron-On. So by just searching iron-on, you'll see it pops up here in the results. Because I use it often, I have it favorited. So you can click this little star to add materials to your favorite list. We'll select Done. You'll see it's here in my favorites, so you don't have to browse after you've added it. Because we chose Everyday Iron-On, we will get this little warning to make sure that everything is mirrored for the mats. So if for some reason you forgot at this point, you can click back on the mats here on the left-hand side, click the green edit button, and then you can turn mirror on here at the bottom. So when it's green, mirror is turned on. Once you select the material, Design Space is going to prompt you with the tools that you need. For your Cricut Maker, it comes with the fine point blade. It will be in clamp B. So that's the clamp on the right side of your machine. The blades always go in the B clamp. It's clamp B for blades. And any accessories like pens or scoring styluses you'll find goes in the A clamp for accessories. So right now the A clamp is empty. We're loading a fine point blade into clamp B. And then we're going to load our mat. Once we've done these steps, the go button will appear and start flashing as well on the machine. It needs like 20 minutes, and then we'll have to check it. So if you're ever unsure about which color to cut first, you can always double check Design Space. You have to be careful. Just because it says number 1 doesn't mean that's the one that it's going to cut. If you click any of the colors, you'll see that it changes to light gray. So this is the mat that's cutting right now, even if number 1 isn't cut yet. So you want to make sure that you're clicking on the right option, selecting the material. So let's do the iron-on again. Everyday Iron-On, there's a spot on my favorite list now, so I can click this little star to make it a favorite. I'm going to do remember this material setting since every material mat is the same. That way I won't have to click it for every single mat. And we can load the mats and get started. So again, the first one that's clicked is light gray. That's going to be cut right now. But if I click this number 2, this is the one that's going to cut. So I'm going to start at the very top. And then you'll notice there's a little check mark once it's finished cutting. When we're using iron-on or heat transfer vinyl, you always want to make sure that the shiny plastic side is facing down on the mat and that the matte material side is facing upwards. So if you're unsure about which side is plastic and which side is material, you can always use a weeding tool just to lift up the corner and you'll be able to tell the difference. So by just grabbing a little corner here and lifting it, you'll be able to see that one side lifts and peels while the other stays hard and rigid. So the hard side is the plastic that's here on the back. So that's the piece that we're going to put down on the mat. Now when I'm lining anything up on the mat, I don't like to try just place it down and it be straight. I find it's very hard to get it down when you're trying to do that with the material. So I try to line it up either with the top two corners or the side two corners here on the left. So I'm just taking the top 2 points of the material and touching those down against the corners. And once this top line is in place, everything else will just follow right down straight on the mat. So you don't have to worry about getting it all to make contact, just 2 corners, either the top 2 or the 2 on either side of the mat. And now for it to go into the machine, we want to make sure that it is going under these 2 pieces of plastic in front of the gray rollers, and that the mat is all the way up against those gray rollers before pressing the load button. I'm not pushing it in, I'm just helping to make sure that the mat goes in the right direction. I left the excess at the bottom. It's not going to hurt anything. The machine's just going to make sure that the mat is the right size. We have the right blade in, and then it will start the flashing button to cut. So you're going to press the go button to start the cut. So it won't take long to cut this first color. If this is your first time cutting this type of vinyl with your machine, before you unload, you can always use your weeding tool just to make sure that it did properly cut. So I start from the outside edge and just lift. So you can see it's lifting where the cut is, so it is deep enough. If for some reason it's not lifting like you're using glitter vinyl, you can always do a second cut by pressing the cut button again before unloading. There's no need for us to do that. We can unload and get ready to weave this. So to remove the vinyl from the mat, I'm always flipping it over and bending the mat. That'll really help, especially with removable and permanent vinyl. We can get ready for the next color. So in Design Space, you'll see that this first blue mat has a little check mark. It's been cut. We're now on to the second mat. It's light gray. We're doing this blue. You can make sure that mirror is set by clicking the edit button. We've already made sure that mirror is there, but if you really don't want to forget, you can always check again. So remember, the material setting is checked, so we're not going to have to pick the material. All we need to do is put the material on the mat and load it into the machine. So if you change your mind about what color you want right now for the next one, you don't have to use blue. You could put pink, but I'm going to stick with the color theme that we have and put my blue onto the mat. So again, I'm lining up these corners. Everything else will follow. It's shiny side down, material side up. That's why we're doing the mirror. Once it's under the 2 plastic pieces, up against the gray rollers, we can load the mat. Now, if you're having a hard time seeing where the line is to cut, you can always use an overhead light or a bright pad. just to be able to see that line. So I'm able to clearly see where the line is cut. And I'm a big fan of keeping scraps, so I always make sure to cut off any extra to keep. So it cuts really fast for these little pieces, so I'm always unloading to get the next one going as quickly as possible. So if we double check again in Design Space to see which color we should be using at now, we got the check mark on mat 2. We're on to the purple or the pink, whichever color you choose. So again, we are going matte side up, shiny side down. Put 2 corners on the mat and the rest will follow. So we're looking to remove the excess vinyl from all these pieces. So that's what's called weeding. So we use the little Cricut tool with the poke at the end, so the weeding tool, to remove all the excess vinyl to reveal the cut image at the end. So I always start from the outside corner and work my way in just to avoid any mistakes or peeling off the wrong piece of vinyl. So it's a little hard to see right now, but let's zoom in and see if that helps you see the bright pad a little bit. So as soon as I lift up the corner, you'll be able to see where the lines are. The camera doesn't really do me any favors, but for me it's a huge help to have the light underneath. So we have the 3 colors. All the pokey sides go on one side and all the blunt sides are on the other. If you're ever trying to figure out which way they go, left or right, that's how I identify the edges. Let me bring that closer so you can see. So those lines are easier for me to see where I'm weeding. So I want to do the outside in first, and I'm going to make sure to cut any extra vinyl off because I don't want to waste anything that I don't need to. These little pieces of pink are great for noses or mouths inside of people and characters. So I always make sure to keep light pink. I'll never get rid of light pink scraps. So from the outside in, like usual, and heat transfer vinyl is very forgiving when it's been weeded properly. So you can be aggressive with it when you're pulling the vinyl off. For all these little pieces that are left in the center, we'll just take those off with the weeding tool one at a time. You want to make sure that you're not leaving any residue on the carrier sheet. You don't want any of these pieces to accidentally stick when you iron it on just because you don't notice it at the last minute. So I always double check to make sure I've taken all the insides of all the letters off and really toss them out of the way in the garbage, in a Kleenex box, in a Lysol container, just anywhere that's not on this transfer sheet. So we have it cut out in pink now. We have all of the pieces, so we're going to be able to layer this on our project and see the order that you like. So let's get this out of the way and we'll get started with the Easy Press. And because the Easy Press works with the app, everything is already set for us automatically on the press. So you can get this closed. We don't want that anymore. I'm using this cotton bag. So you want to make sure that you're just doing a quick press before you actually press to get rid of any excess moisture or wrinkles. If you're having a hard time locating the center of the bag, you can always fold the top up and make a little crease line, as well as folding it in half and making a crease line that way as well. If you're unsure about the pattern or the order of the pattern, you can always double check in Design Space what the original image looks like. So I always like to keep an idea or double check before I put anything on just to make sure that it is all in the right order. So we have this bigger piece up at the top, the long slender one in the middle, and the one with the 2 little pokies at the bottom. So when we're looking at this, even if we change the color, I always like to look at the shape and not just relying on the color, since I did change a couple of the things in the project. So I have two different versions of the same cut project here. I like the way the blue one looks, so that's actually the one I'm going to put on the bag for today. So the first color we have is this teal at the top. Now you could choose to iron them on one at a time, but I'm trying to do the least amount of pressing on the vinyl as possible. So if I can put any colors on at the same time, that's what I'm going to do. So to achieve that, I'm going to trim any of the plastic carrier sheet as close as I can to the vinyl so that I can place them close to one another, but without it overlapping. So if you're going to try press more than one at once, or one layer at once, you have to make sure that there really is nothing between the vinyl and the bag. Because if there's any carrier sheet stuck in there, it will stay under the material or under the vinyl and it's not going to stick. So this last one here has a big piece of carrier sheet. That's fine because it's going over the purple. As long as it's not under, it's fine. So once you have everything where you think you like it, you can make sure that it still lines up with your text. So you just want to be double sure. So everything lines up nicely. So you're able to take the press, and with even pressure, I'm not pushing more on one side or the other. I'm not pressing very hard. We're just going to press down for 30 seconds. Now normally if I was doing multiple presses, I would do it for a little bit less time. So because this is the base layer, I'll do it for 25 seconds instead of 30 because I really want to make sure that it does adhere well. Now the machine is automatically going to set to 15 seconds because it's expecting us to flip it over. The app is prompting to flip it over and do the back for 15 seconds. So anytime you're layering, you want to make sure that you're doing like a maximum of 4 layers. And if you are heating it up 4 different times, you'll be reducing the amount of time you're doing for each layer. So once you've pressed the back and we're flipping it over, you want to make sure that it's completely cool to the touch before you peel it. It will be quite hot. So to help it cool down, we're just going to shake the bag with it open. And let it cool down before we peel. Now the app or the material, the heat guide will tell you whether you should peel it cold or warm. Most of the vinyl for this type is cold peel vinyl. So if it's still warm, the glue will peel off at the same time. So because it's layered, we didn't put as much time on it as well. So you really want to watch the vinyl when you're lifting. And if anything's peeling off, you can always touch it again with the heat press, even just for a couple of seconds. So we have the first layer down. Now we're ready to put the words on top. So for this one, we're going to use the blue text. Now in the image, it's centered and the R overlaps onto the lower color and the dot of the I is a little bit above the line. So I'm comparing to the original image when I'm trying to line everything up here for layering. So once we're ready in the Heat app, I'm going to do Start a New Project again, and it'll recommend once more, preheat for 30 seconds, apply light pressure. Because we've already applied some heat to this, we want to be careful not to overheat it. So I'm only going to do 20 seconds and then put a little bit more pressure from the back. Another thing to note is that this carrier sheet doesn't fully protect the vinyl underneath anymore. So if you put your heat press on exposed vinyl, it's going to melt the vinyl. So anywhere that it's not covered, by that plastic heat transfer sheet, you're going to have to use another piece of material to cover. So you can either use butcher paper or a piece of parchment paper. I'm going to use a piece of butcher paper just to make sure that it's not melting when it's being pressed. So the press does say 30 seconds. I'm going to do it for 25 like we did the first time. I just want to make sure that it's adhered. If I need to touch it again later with the press, we can do that, but I just don't want to melt the lower layer, the first layer that we put on. So we'll be able to flip it and press from the back now. The machine will automatically adjust the time with the heat press app, which is easier than going into the heat guide, especially if you were not confident with the easy press before. It just makes it a little easier. Now this is going to be, once again, a cold peel, so we want to make sure that we give the bag a chance to cool down before we take this vinyl off. And if any of the pieces start lifting, you just wait a little bit longer before you finish the peel. I'm going to do one quick press just in case any little pieces came off on the back. And we're finished. And we're finished. Now you could also do the exact same thing on cardstock with heat transfer vinyl. I'm absolutely in love with putting it onto cardstock. It makes the nicest frames. So we'll do the exact same project, but this time we're going to layer it on cardstock. So we can put all the 3 pieces on the back. And same as before, I'm going to take off any excess vinyl just to make sure that nothing is underneath or getting overlapped. So we have the base layer down. We're going to press it for 15 seconds. It's just more delicate on paper. I don't want to burn the paper either, so if you're concerned about burning the paper, you can always use a piece of parchment paper just in case. This is particularly thick cardstock, so I don't have that problem with burning. But if you're using delicate paper, the butcher piece just gives you a little bit of added protection. And once again, we're going to wait till this is cool to peel it off. Now I lifted it and it wasn't ready, but you can see I just pushed it right back down and it'll flatten again. You just don't want to lift it too much. Even just these 3 pieces in a frame would look nice, but I think the spring is in the air will just add a little bit of pop to my wall of color. Okay, now same as before, we'll put the top layer on. There we go. Now these pieces of vinyl that are exposed, we definitely want to use parchment paper just to make sure they're not being burnt. We'll do it one more time for 15 seconds. And you still can use the Easy Press 3 without the app. So you can use it traditionally like you were doing with the other machine. You just need to set it up the first time you use it with the app. And then after that, you can manually set the machine as well. So I'm going to let this cool down. So here's our last heat transfer project. Winter is officially over. Take this off. We'll just do one quick press with a piece of parchment paper just to be sure that everything is adhered well. Any little pieces that lift, we put back down. Perfect. So we'll place this in the frame. Here are both our finished projects, both heat transfer vinyl, one on a cotton bag, a little tote bag, and the other is just in a simple black frame from the dollar store.